if you're tense, your welds look tense. And if you're relaxed, your welds will be a lot cleaner. Muscles are multiplying the effect. So the vibration multiplies the tension, and you should be aware of that. Because the blood's not being allowed in. So the blood not being allowed in means you're not getting normal flow of life force to your hands and your tendons. And then when you open your hand, you can see the blood flow back. You might still feel that tension.
I feel some after effect there, yeah.
It is a blue collar job, and most employers will see you as easily replaceable. You're just a number, you're a dime a dozen kind of guy.
Today I'm joined by Robert Cotrell. He is an expert welder, a lifelong career. I know Robert, or Rob, from my yoga teacher training we did together. And while he was fixing my motorcycle, I needed some new brake pads. We thought, well, we might as well do that podcast about welding we've been talking about.
No, I have never welded inside a septic tank.
Okay.
A mud pump.
What's a mud pump?
A mud pump is the mud that they squeeze down into the earth to frack.
Okay. Have you worked on fracking?
I've worked on fracking equipment.
How does that work?
Well, these pumps are put together with very thick slabs of steel, all cut with plasma, and you have to create welds that are sealed and can hold up to extreme pressure. And inside them, let's just say you fit yourself very tightly, and you have to basically weld within inches of your face as you slowly spin around in a very crouched kind of condition.
Okay, so you're inside this tube.
You need to weld the inside of this, yes.
Okay.
As well as the outside.
So how long is that tube? Does it go all the way down?
So you have 5-inch slabs, and when you build it together, it's about a 4-foot long pump.
Okay, it's just a pump, and then it's attached to
So
some
what we
sort of-
actually built was very much like an engine block. So it's very thick, very durable, and the other parts of the pump were created by a different company and then assembled somewhere else.
Okay, cool. So what's it like, the welding inside the tube where you're cramped up, like you cannot have the freedom of movement? What's the difference being restricted in, I'm assuming, your arms, where you can look, compared to like regular welding?
Every welding creates very hot sparks, and you can't escape them. So you are wearing thick garment, leather, and you are prepared to be burned, and you're also prepared to move very little.
Mm-hmm.
So when your arms are cramped, you can't escape it. You're committed, and it gets very warm in there. Because you have to preheat it too. Because if you don't preheat the thick metals, the molecules don't blend correctly. So every time you're welding, you're heating 2 separate pieces of metal and adding a third through a very hot process of arcing.
Okay, how hot is the arcing process, and how hot do you think you are experiencing the inside of the suit?
The arc is, generally speaking, welding begins around 900 degrees Fahrenheit. So somewhere between 9 and 12, and you're making things melt. And because these are horizontal welds, it's going to be closer to 9.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if it was, it's a surface weld, so it could drop out. So
Drop out?
Yeah, so you could make it very hot and it could literally drop towards your shoes. So your shoes also have to have protection on them, or you could burn straight through your
The
laces.
welding material could drip,
Drip.
or okay.
Yeah. So yourself, you're 98.6 and sweating bullets sometimes, but not in the beginning. Generally speaking, you chip away at it. Take it in chunks or do one weld at a time and get out of there. And
How long is a chunk of time?
welding one out in its entirety would take all day, sometimes days, depending on availability of stuff or parts. But we're talking about a very large chunk of metal getting very warm for a long period of time. You could go out to lunch and come back a half hour later and it's still warm enough. Well, it's probably not warm enough to weld again. You'd have to preheat it.
Huh.
So you have to preheat it to 300 degrees so that when you start blending the molecules, you get the kind of molecular bond that you want. So you're actually fusing it, and you have to make, like I said, a weld that's going to hold up the pressure.
And how long in between breaks? How long are you welding without taking a break, let's say?
A break would be getting your body out of the center of that thing just to get a drink of water. So you could be in there for an hour before you just had enough.
I can imagine that is it dark in there?
No, it's not that long, it's only
Okay.
like overall 4 feet long.
Okay.
So it's suspended, and you may be on the ground, and it's on a table with a hole in it, so you could find your feet on the floor, and you could begin up here, and then you slowly crouch.
So you're confined to a small space, right?
Very much so.
How does it change?
Open at the top and bottom.
How does it change your posture? Like, because now, if you're crouching down, some parts of the sequence of welding, right,
Yeah.
are gonna be easier on your body
Yeah.
than other parts.
Oh, absolutely. So you get closer to the bottom, and your knees are talking to you a whole lot.
How does that change the accuracy or the how smooth or how good your weld is, how strong it is? Or
I like where you're going with this, because as you become uncomfortable, your welds will show that. So comfort, or your precise measurements visually of blending equal parts of top and bottom with your third part, your rod, will change. If you're tense, your welds look tense, and if you're relaxed, your welds will be a lot cleaner and more predictable. So you could think of them like laying bricks, and when you're uncomfortable, the bricks will look like they've been laid by a drunk.
okay, then the bricks would be, some would be more close together than other bricks, and they would be like shifted to the sides, and a weld would look similar. It's
Well, let's just say wavy.
wavy.
So in the effect, you would have to go back and repair them. So you'd have to grind stuff out, which would be a whole different kind of spark, and a spinning device, abrasive, and still in a confined space. So, you're wearing some breathing apparatus, at least
Really?
at least a face mask.
Okay.
So when it comes to making a beautiful weld, you usually find yourself tracing the path you're going to take, and then beginning, and then initiate it and follow it through, and don't go any further than you first traced out, because as soon as you start extending, it will show. It will just show.
So first you do a dry run without the
Correct.
heat on or the metal there, so that
Correct.
you know the range of motion you're going through,
Absolutely.
and then your body knows where it has to go, and then you can repeat that.
So when you're using the method that we call metal inert gas, or using a wire feed welder, you are using a inert gas so that when the molten metal is trying to solidify, it does not grab oxygen or other impurities from the air, causing porosity or cheesy weld. So this would be very detrimental. So your angle while you're welding is everything. So you want to have a slight amount of push, which we could say 15 degrees, and you want to maintain that, because as soon as you start pushing a little too far, you can create a Venturi effect with your inert gas, causing it to draw in impurities, just like if you were to blow over the tip of a straw while drinking your McDonald's out of a cup. You can actually get the soda pop to come up the straw and into your friend's face. That's a Venturi effect. It's just like painting. You blow air over a tube, but you can find yourself. So angle is very important while welding.
Okay, so throughout your line, you're having to keep the angle very consistent. But also, if you take too much time, if you go too slow, it gets too thick. If you go too fast, it gets too thin. So you need to control both of those things at the same time. And while you're tensed up, you don't have that flexibility. How does the tension feel like, and how does that feel? How does that change the feel?
That's an interesting question. To put it in a childish term, I'd say welding is very much like melting a crayon into a crack. If you melt it too slow, you'll break your crayon. And if you melt it too fast, you'll just wash it out and you won't have the kind of deposit you need. And if you're trying to create equal deposition, your speed and everything has to have equal tension. Your whole body is thinking equal sides, equal speed. Run the same wire speed on the welder as you did yesterday. So the next guy might run a little slower than you, and they may adjust the machine accordingly, but everything is very much like bowling. You win by doing same.
Where do you get that skill of keeping everything the same? Where does the control of your body, where do you draw that from?
From within. I mean, you either have a sense of timing or you don't. And obviously each weld procedure has a call out for how much deposit, how much leg. So you have two legs and they have to be equal legs. So if you're welding at a 90 degrees, for example, your vertical leg should equal your horizontal leg, so that, let's just use any dimension. So let's say it's a 1/2 inch weld, so that you're equally a 1/2 inch up as you're a 1/2 inch out. So as you create a fillet weld, you just have to think 1/2 inch, and you just have to have the experience. And then, of course, a couple of measuring devices so that you stay within your parameters.
But you say equal tension throughout your full body, or just your hands, or?
I think it's really your whole body. You will sometimes want to weld 3 feet long. So you will position your feet in a manner that you are a little off balance at the beginning, and then at the end you're going to be at the limit, the extent of your balance. So let's say you're always in balance, but you are moving your body steadily, and you can sometimes find something to rest your other parts on so that you can have a guide, but otherwise you are trying to move very steady always. And this involves your breathing. And is it like a dance? No, because nobody dances that slow. But it really is, it is an odd movement.
So even though you have a range of motion that would go far further than your welding width in your body, keeping the tension equal is only a shorter range of your motion. Your ability to keep the tension equal doesn't happen everywhere.
You need to know your limits. So you may be good at 3 feet, the next guy might be good at doing 2 feet, and so on. Or let's talk inches. Many of the call-outs are saying you should weld no longer than 15 inches. And that way it's basic, it's right in front of you. You may want to pull it towards you more so than push it away, because then you can see what you're creating. And you only have your arm's length to see what you're doing, and then beyond, right in front of you, all you see is your tool.
I'm not sure when you last welded, but now that you've started yoga, you're more flexible. Your muscles have changed. Do you think the flexibility would help you have a longer weld? Or
I think my style was always to find my balance at my furthest point and then pull that weld up until it's right in front of me and then quit. And then I reposition my feet and then rebalance. So I would say they're very complementary, whether I was doing it in my welding heyday or not. They definitely go hand in hand. I would say that welding and yoga, welding almost meditation-wise, I would say, because you are focused on just a dot, really, a little fireball, and everything else disappears. So if you're not paying attention to that fireball, you're probably going to make an ugly weld, because you have to focus that much.
you ever close your eyes after the fireball and see it still?
If you do, you better change the shade on your hood, because this is bad.
Okay.
I have no cataracts. I've been welding for years, and I love the darkest shield I can get.
So I did some welding once at a dog rescue thing, building like a little fence.
Yes.
And they didn't have any glasses or thing.
Ooh.
So they told me, look at it and then look away as you weld. So don't look at it while you weld.
Ooh, and then you'll get a sunburn worse than any you've ever had.
True. And yeah, like basically every few weeks we'd have to do it again. The fence would fall apart. Yeah, it was. So
I would say if you could in the future look through your phone as a camera, that will filter it out.
Huh. Okay.
So if you could put your camera in a box, you could weld with your camera viewing your weld, and at least your camera might take some guff, but your eyes will be just fine.
Okay, so it sounds like when you're in a range of motion, you find your balance at your furthest reach, and then as you draw in closer to your center, it actually gets easier as you go.
So we're talking long welds, but
Yeah.
if you're doing multiple short welds, which is stitch patterns, if you think you can do it from a chair while you're trying to build something, you're wrong. You may have to climb on top of this thing. You'll find yourself in many different positions. You might be balancing on one foot, you might be on your knees, you might be welding overhead. So there's you know, there's technique to all kinds of that, but always maintain your 15 degree, your push or your, yeah, definitely push, and you got to be able to see it. Otherwise, sometimes you can kind of go by sound, because a good crackle like frying bacon is definitely a part of a good weld. So you're using more than just your sight. It's like you learn what 60 hertz sounds like, 50 hertz sounds like. Yeah, there's a frequency to a frying bacon, if you will.
It gets intuitive.
It's more than just putting a peg in a hole, that's for sure. It does involve skill as an artisan. Yeah.
So after the weld with the heat, you sometimes have to grind it down or smooth it out with like these heavy tools that polish it, right?
Well, for example, a start and a stop. You should always grind a stop, because there are certain things that glass over a stop. And a start is cold. So you have, if you're having one long continuous weld, say you're building a vehicle, and you've got a 16-foot long vehicle and you're doing 15-inch segments. As soon as you're done with welding your 15 inches, you better get your grinder out and you knock the glass off, and that stop becomes your start. And then you begin and you do another 15. So your grinder is also going to be a part of your welding.
So the stop, the air is different, and that doesn't make a good connection, strong start. So that's why you have to grind it off.
Depending on the material, a stop can have what's called a crater. So you want to even out a crater so that you don't have a crack perpetuate. So aluminum, for example, it solidifies very rapidly, because aluminum is one of the best known heat sinks. So you throw heat into it and it dissipates rapidly. The heat just travels real fast. Say if you're welding titanium, whoa, that holds heat and it'll just glow for inches. That's why you have to back gas that, because it's still slowly solidifying. So when it comes to your stops and starts, you always look for craters. And when you start on top of a stop, you want to dish it out so that you can have time to get your deposit going and then continue.
So you've told me before that once you're grinding using these vibrating tools, then the tension you hold in your hands, it can be damaging.
Carpal tunnel syndrome is real amongst welders. And some welders who are poor welders grind a lot more than good welders. So yes, some will suffer.
So let's say you are grinding a lot.
Yes.
How can you save your carpal? So prevent carpal tunnel, save your hands?
Well, if you think in terms of breathing, how long you're comfortable holding your breath, you should hold your tool equally as long. This is logical because your body is one, and your lungs only like to close off for so long. I mean, we could get all technical about how much carbon dioxide is talking to your brain, or carbon monoxide, what's really triggering the response to take another breath. But in general, if you are to treat your carpal tunnel politely, you should grind for 30 seconds, rest for 10, grind for 30 seconds. And I see so many people grind for 5 minutes straight, and they have no idea how punishing that is to themselves. First of all, you're talking about tendons. They have no direct connection to any vessels. They have fluids in and around them that obtain oxygen and nutrients from the blood, and it is very much by osmosis. And if you're just vibrating your tendons for an indefinite amount of time, you are causing them damage, and the reparation is going to take days, not minutes. So why punish yourself? So ergonomically speaking, you should be aware how you can hurt yourself.
Is it the vibration or the tension that hurts you?
I would say if you've been an athlete for any period of time, you've come across devices that will vibrate your entire body so that when you're doing curls with dumbbells, your muscles are multiplying the effect. So the vibration multiplies the tension, and you should be aware of that.
I've never heard of that before. What do you mean by multiplies? How does the vibration do that?
So if your body is making micro adjustments in balance, or your whole body is just like jumping up and down, say just a millimeter on this vibratory pad while you're doing some curls, the length of your muscle is also changing, because you are no longer at this point, you're a millimeter different. So your whole body is doing this, and it multiplies the effect of doing just one curl.
So why can you not just let it be those few millimeters of change all the time? It would average out, right?
Well, I mean, vibration is not predictable, and you are trying to affect a true cause of gouging. You are trying to remove metal. These are, I mean, sometimes the disc will be just a little bit oblong, and you have no control over that vibration. So the tension that you're applying is being multiplied by the vibration, and these sensations, you're not thinking any of these thoughts, and you're not feeling them until they add up to the point where a doctor says, yeah, you got to stop doing that. So most people have no idea what the effects of having a job with vibration involved is doing to them.
So from what I understand from this, it is actually the tension that is damaging you, but the amount of vibration multiplies the tension. It
scales it differently, correct.
So the amount of tension you're using depends on the strength of the vibration. So you're capable of sensing that.
You are, but you're also trying to complete the equation with your blood supplying nutrients to make your tendons happy, and all of this is happening by osmosis over time, and you're doing these things in a now moment to make money for the purpose of buying your next watermelon, but you're not really using the idea of what you're doing as being detrimental to you. You think you're making money. And when it comes down to it, yeah, you are. But you're also, maybe you've never been educated as to how your body's responding to these things. And you don't know until time adds up. Yes, tension. Too much tension. I like the effect of squeezing your fingers, making a fist, and holding that fist for just 60 seconds. And after 60 seconds, open your hand and watch how long it takes for your hand to return to its normal color. So here's a real good way to understand how slowly juices go back to where they're supposed to be. And it also illustrates what tension is. So tension right now has squished all of the nutrients out of the area where they're required. And when you open your hand, it'll be quite pale because the blood's not being allowed in. So the blood not being allowed in means you're not getting normal flow of life force to your hands and your tendons. And then when you open your hand, you can see the blood flow back. You might still feel that tension.
I feel some after effect there, yeah. It's tired, but it's also a bit nummy, tingling.
Now what if you got an 8-hour job that does this to you to the effect where you're driving home and your arms still feel like they're vibrating?
So you're pushing nutrients out. Potentially you're also pushing out whatever toxic stuff is in there. So could it be healthy at some points to do a little bit, like a few minutes here and there in your life? Like in yoga when you're pressing on,
Oh, absolutely.
squeezing stuff.
Oh yeah, I think the act of the tourniquet effect is really good because it cuts off the flow and then you get that rush back.
Yeah. And we do that a lot.
Oh yeah, in yoga we do that a lot. I mean, in fact, that's how you affect your organs.
That's how you affect your organs?
That's how you can say you're actually massaging your organs, because the stuff that you do in twisting and compression is it is going deep.
It's like, if you wouldn't do that, it's like washing your clothes without ever squeezing out all the dirty water.
You just get it wet.
Yeah.
And then when it dries, it's a little stinky.
And then you're just using diffusion to get stuff out. You need a lot of water flow.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But too much and you're depriving the tissue of what it needs to
Well, you're
survive.
stretching things,
Huh.
and you're asking it to heal again. And the time frame for healing things like tendons is a little longer than you would think.
How does it feel?
I'm no doctor, but I'm definitely going to tell you, when your tendons hurt, they take time to heal.
Have you had this yourself, the
Oh,
tendon?
yeah. The trigger finger, like when your fingers don't want to move because you've been squeezing so long. You wake up in the morning and you go, why are my two fingers still stuck together like this? That's when you start to learn how ambidextry, how you need to be more ambidextrous if you are to survive and have longevity in a career like welding. Because you have to hold this tension, right? But at the same time, you have to hold it like a little bird. So if you're still doing things with brute force, and I've seen these guys, they're huge. Some of these guys will just do it one-handed. So they're not resting their hand on their other hand. They're not maybe guiding it with the table or guiding it some other way with just the pinky sticking out. They're just brute force pushing that thing along, and that's just a fist. So I don't know how long you're making a fist all day long without it having some effect.
Yeah. So when you're saying tension like holding a bird, there's enough tension to trap it,
Yes.
but there's not enough that you're hurting the bird.
Correct.
So it's you still have the control and the tension required for your movements,
Correct.
but not so much that you're completely inhibiting the nutrient flow.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's limits to the motions that you should be taking, and I think when you're skilled with your right hand, you can guide your left hand with your right hand very well and begin your ambidextrous occupation. Because if you're going to be always left-handed or always right-handed, you will wear out faster. And if you want to do this kind of career for the rest of your life, it's always been an endeavor of mine to be well-rounded, and so why not begin using both hands?
So you're able to weld with both hands.
Yes. Yeah, that's kind of a given for me. And you will find yourself in tight spots where you need to. So you might as well start practicing day one.
Do you feel like it? How does the practice look like? changing
Awkward,
hands.
silly.
That first time is gonna be a shitty weld.
Yeah, you may have to grind it out, begin again,
How does it?
but it's not foolish.
Yeah, it's. I'm sure it's good for your brain to
Aye,
get that.
indeed.
How does it feel having a blue collar job where you're damaging your physical body? Do you feel like there's enough awareness and respect for that type of career?
I have that,
You have that.
and I feel like the catcher in the rye trying to help others recognize how damaging it is. They may have a passion for it, and I think everybody needs a coach. I think any new welder should be paired with an older welder, not just to enhance their skill set, but to be wiser about how they could be hurting themselves. Because most companies don't really care. They just want the end result, and they're not going to tell you how to get there. So I have seen so much apathy from companies that when it comes to longevity of their own personnel, it's just a shortcoming that really could be an asset. They could really be showing people how to be better welders by also being cognizant of the dangers. It's one of the most dangerous jobs I've ever had, not just from the heat, but the dimension of the things that we're creating. I mean, we're working right now on 28-ton tanks.
Military tanks.
Aye, yes. Yes. And they're going to Poland, and they're going to everywhere in the world, so what we do is a lot of welding. Thick welds, repeated welds, welds upon welds.
Do you feel like you respect it, and I respect it? Do you feel there's enough respect from generally normal people?
I don't think a lot of people want to weld.
I
I think welding is uniquely enriching, because once you can learn how to weld, if you're mechanically inclined, you don't see things as broken as most people do. You just see it as dysfunctional, and you can repair it. So when you have the ability to change the outcome of a cracked piece of metal, where someone would go, oh no, never, that's broken, and you look at that as, that's a 5-minute repair. It's pretty cool.
So because you're fixing this like metal, which is the thing that doesn't change,
Yeah.
you have the power to change that.
You're
fix
making
that.
constant acts of permanence, and you also know how to remove them.
So now you can fix anything.
Yeah.
It changes your mindset.
It really does. It does.
Everything is fixable.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's a beautiful thing. But it is a blue-collar job, and most employers will see you as easily replaceable. You're just a number, you're a dime a dozen kind of guy. Until you're not, you know. And I think that your experience doesn't always measure up to your value, but if you're valuable from day one, your experience does compound, and then you can help others become valuable.
Did you have that? Did you do an apprenticeship with a mentor?
Yeah, no, can I say rat shop? You know, I looked up rat shop in the dictionary and it's not there. But rats are known to be there always, and they do the dirty work, and they don't necessarily get the reward. So you're asking about a job that, unless you're an underwater welder or you're constantly welding aircraft parts, you're not really going to be rewarded. So if you're doing very specialized welding, you can make a very awesome career of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've actually thought about doing that job, like oil rigs and like going scuba dive, no, not scuba diving, this weird type of very deep diving, and then fixing stuff. It sounded cool to me at some point.
It is. And it's a young man's job. So as much as I love welding and as much as I love the water, they would laugh at me if I said I want to be an underwater welder. Because I think they pretty much let you be an underwater welder till you're about 45 and you're done. Don't quote me on that. But if you're interested in it, do it while you're young. And who would have thought you could weld underwater?
I know, right? But you're providing the oxidizing stuff, I guess.
Things do oxidize slowly underwater. It's when they reach the air, then the rust happens rapidly. So it's an interesting concept.
Things don't rust underwater?
Oh, they sure do.
Okay.
I mean, it's H2O, isn't it? There's two molecules of O. Is that how it goes?
No, other way around.
The other way around? Two hydrogens, one oxygen. So we're still oxidizing down there.
That's cool. Yeah, you got anything else to share? Because I think that was very interesting.
For welding? Yeah.
You can wrap it up if you want.
You have to use different techniques for doing vertical up, vertical down, horizontal, and so you do have to have some fine motor skills. You're not using your gross motor skills, your larger muscles. A lot of it's the fine stuff, so that's why your tendons or your smaller tendons are the ones that are going to suffer. So when you're doing a vertical up, for example, you have to have a very quick flick of your wrist back and forth because you're trying to defy gravity and you're working your weld up. And this technique has probably more damaging effects to your body than you would imagine if that was all you had to do was a bunch of vertical ups.
So is the repetitive tiny motion, is that the damaging part?
It can be, but hold that thing like a little bird and do it in segments and rest and begin again, and I think you'll save yourself.
Is that, I'm not sure if you're familiar with RSI, repetitive strain injury, repetitive strain injury.
That's what we're talking about here, trying to
Because
save yourself from that.
In the context where I know is people that game a lot with their mouse.
Oh my God.
It's like, how can you like get injured from that? But it's
I
too
think
much
the
tension.
intensity between your ears definitely translates into your fingers. And how do you ever keep a straight spine doing gaming?
So unhealthy.
Gamers need to learn how to do yoga. I mean, after how many hours of being crouched over, you need to do some back bends, baby.
And you're saying it's between the ears how much tension you give that bird, right?
Oh yeah,
So the yoga helps with that.
absolutely.
And the breathing helps with that.
Breathing for sure. Equal in, equal out, through your nose. So some welders may find themselves holding their breath.
I would
In the
hold my
beginning.
breath because then I feel like I'd be more accurate.
It is true. It is true. Just like if you're a shooter, you want to be very steady, and just the muscles between your ribs, if they're moving, it changes your shoulder. So you have a very specialized way to breathe if you're a shooter. And I would say that you have a specialized way to breathe if you're a welder also, whether you know it or not.
So this is interesting because there is you want to hold the bird,
Yeah.
so you want to keep breathing,
Yeah.
but to be accurate, you cannot breathe. It's a bit of a paradox there.
It is until it isn't. You have to practice.
So you're saying nose breathing very slow.
Nose breathing, equal ins and equal outs help you, and that is definitely a practice of yoga. Or just body control in general, balance in general.
Might be a very hard question, but why does the breath and the tension go together? Why does it have that relationship?
I've pondered about this a little bit, and obviously your chest cavity or your lung container has volume, it has weight, and you have to balance these things. And movement, just like the vibratory sense that you can change the tension by vibrating more, if you control that instead of just having it be completely what do you call it, autonomous? Well, your automatic breathing system is usually not enough, because you can find yourself huffing and puffing at some point rather than telling yourself it's all going to be okay, just keep it nice and steady. And then I think the tension becomes same and your control becomes same. I haven't met too many yogis at work. You know, you got 100 different welders, and it stuns me that more people don't do what I do.
There's resistance with them against yoga, I guess.
Some people think it's all about yoga pants. Some people think it's a 4-letter word. I know my father thinks it's just stretching, and I know my mother thinks it's a religion. So, I mean, the misconceptions are abundant. It's okay to have self-control without any of those things. And I think that tension is in our daily lives, and if you practice controlling tension, what a nice idea.
It is a nice idea. I'm still sort of surprised how big an effect your changes in the volume of your lungs has on your heart rate, your stress levels in your mind, but then also to your hand and posture position, because you would think you're able to control very well the changes in volume automatically, so it doesn't affect your accuracy, but it somehow does.
Well, imagine this. You're not paying attention to your breathing, and yet your rib cage is connected to your pecs, connected to your lats, connected to your shoulder, which is connected to your fingers, and you're trying to control something without identifying or having a predictable pattern. So if you have a predictable pattern here, which is really your core, you can have a predictable pattern here, where you can actually have the adjustment, if you will, and you can float instead of having it be so autonomous that you're not aware of it. So being aware of it's way more beneficial than being unaware of it.
I see. So if you don't really need your brain to connect your breath and your hand in terms of control, if your hand can just rely on a very steady change in volume of your lungs, like it's one continuous flow. There's no stops and starts, there's no big changes in rate of airflow in and out. That'll allow the control, it's more predictable for your hands.
That also predicts your blood flow, as you were saying, your heart rate, so your fingers are pulsing too. So that pulse goes all the way to your fingertip. So handling one of the hottest jobs on the planet takes a lot of cool.
So you can feel your breath in your fingertips that way.
Some may, some may never. Yes, I would say. For me.
Very cool. Thank you, Rob.
You're welcome.
Right. I think that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Edit. Have fun with that. Fact check.